from infantry to mechanized assaults. In the Orikhiv direction near Mala Tokmachka and Novodonilivka, the enemy has intensified their assaults. Every day, if it's not motorcyclists, then it's infantry trying to sneak closer to our positions, and on top of that, there are tanks and IFVs. The enemy, reinforced by reserves from the 98th Airborne Division, is pressing along the entire front. The kill zone has expanded by several more kilometers from Orikhiv. A city being shattered by aerial bombs and where civilians are being killed by FPV drones. More in the report.
Mostly these are primarily FPVs, drone attacks. They actively hunt for enemy vehicles.
Being under camouflage nets doesn't mean you're safe. There are a lot of holes and a lot of vehicles stuck. FPV. The military crossed the open area to Orikhiv at high speed. The kill zone has expanded by several more kilometers. It has widened.
Every 6 months, you could say a few more kilometers are added. So if earlier Orikhiv itself was less vulnerable to drone attacks, now it's a constant threat. Right now, the intensity of drone activity is actually disrupting logistics. It's extremely difficult in this situation. And you can't always anticipate them. Even if you can spot some drones, with fiber optic ones, it's just impossible.
Serhiy, call sign Burstin, has been fighting since the beginning of the full-scale invasion. As an infantryman, he stormed Robotyne. That's where he sustained severe injuries during a tank shelling. He survived.
The hardest part was just listening to what was happening there, how many of them there were, how many people were wounded, and that we even had to do evacuations, carrying them out ourselves. The hardest part was that you couldn't do anything to help.
After Serhiy, his brother Vasil also joined the military. Now both of them serve in the same unit.
I had the opportunity to leave the country more than once. And just as many people say, if you have the chance, you should go. But on the other hand, I want to live here in Ukraine. I don't want to leave my land. And just as many people mistakenly think that when the enemy comes to them, then they'll defend their country. By then, it will already be too late.
From tanks to IFVs, the enemy is increasingly resorting to mechanized assaults along paved roads. They are pressing in the area of Novodonilivka, Mala Tokmachka, and Nestoryanka.
Recently, the enemy has been regrouping in the Orikhiv direction. They are bringing in fresh reserves, deploying new units, including airborne assault units.
Once, this apartment in Orikhiv was lively and cozy. Now, with the approach of the Russian world, it's nothing but emptiness and ruin. The houses are destroyed, children's playgrounds are scarred by shrapnel and overgrown with weeds. In the abandoned apartments, there are belongings and photographs. Life has left this place. It's gone. Ruslan Hermeliuk, Mikhailo Putyata, TSN 1+1.
New aid for Ukraine. 2 countries at once have announced contributions to the Payorn program. This is an initiative under which NATO partners purchase the weapons our country needs from the Americans. Thus, New Zealand will allocate $8,700,000 to Payorn. This was announced by the country's Ministers of Defense and Foreign Affairs. Meanwhile, Australia has announced contributions in several areas at once. A significant portion of the funds will be directed toward purchases within the PARL mechanism. However, certain amounts are also allocated for the drone coalition and for military equipment. Specifically, tactical radar stations for air defense, munitions, and combat engineering support equipment. Australia's total contribution amounts to $63 million. And once again, there were fires in Russia last night. Eyewitnesses counted at least 6 explosions in the Stavropol region. Drones likely struck the large chemical plant Azot in Nevenomysk. It is one of the largest producers of nitrogen fertilizers and ammonia in Russia, and also supplies raw materials for the occupiers' explosives. Perhaps that's why the plant has repeatedly become a target for drones. Residents also report at least 10 explosions last night. The westernmost edge of the city of Orel. The Russians complain that from the blasts, their windows almost blew out. They say the drones were flying low and something kept flashing in the sky. There has not yet been any official confirmation, however. Information is circulating in public forums that something was hit nearby, possibly the local CHP plant. There was an explosion over there and now smoke is rising. President Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff and Ukraine's National Security and Defense Council Secretary Rustem Umerov will hold talks today in Miami. Ukraine's ambassador to the US, Olha Stefanishina, confirmed that Umarov is returning to the US from Brussels, where he took part in consultations with European partners. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump shared his thoughts on the conversation between his special envoy, Steve Witkoff, and his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, with Putin this week. According to him, the negotiators reported that they were left with the impression that Putin really does want to end the war and move on to a more normal life to trade with the United States. Although after the same meeting, the Kremlin stated that no compromises had been reached. They did not discuss specific wording, only general positions. At the same time, Trump was unable to explain what further steps should be expected.
Yesterday they had a very good meeting with President Putin. We'll see what happens. You know, when I spoke in this office about not having any cards, I said that you don't have any cards. And that was the time for a settlement. I thought that would have been a much better time for a settlement. But in their wisdom, they decided not to do it. Now, there is a lot against them. But President Putin, and yesterday there was a very good meeting with Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff. What will come out of that meeting, I can't tell you, because it takes two to tango. Ukraine? I think we reached a pretty good agreement with them. They are very satisfied with the result.
And it's a complete illusion. The Belgian Prime Minister, in a loud statement, explained why he is against the confiscation of the aggressor country's assets. In an interview, Bart de Wever expressed doubt that Moscow would lose the war or pay reparations to Kiev for the damage caused to Ukraine. He called the idea of Russia losing a fairy tale and a complete illusion. He also added that it is undesirable for Moscow to lose in a country that possesses nuclear weapons. It would lead to ongoing instability. Bart de Wever also said that his government had received warnings from the Kremlin about possible risks if Brussels were to use frozen Russian assets to provide a loan to Ukraine. At the moment, the European Commission is trying to overcome Belgium's resistance, where a significant portion of Russian funds are frozen, and to find a mechanism acceptable to Brussels that would allow financing Ukraine's needs. So far, this has not happened. The day before, Belgium's chief diplomat criticized the proposal and reminded everyone that his country wants full coverage of the risks it might face. So, will Ukraine actually receive reparations loans? And in your opinion, what is the Kremlin threatening Brussels with? We look forward to all your thoughts in the comments under this broadcast on YouTube. And don't forget to support us with a like and by subscribing to the channel. I'll continue now. This is TSN. The occupiers have been taking abducted Ukrainian children not only to Russia, but also to territories in Belarus and even North Korea, where they are held in special paramilitary camps. There, they are taught to kill enemies and introduced to North Korean veterans. These facts were presented by Katerina Rashevska, an expert from the Regional Center for Human Rights, during hearings in the U.S. Congress dedicated to the abduction of children from the occupied territories of Ukraine. Senator Lindsey Graham, a Republican who chaired the event, emphasized that the abduction of people is one of the grounds for recognizing a country as a state sponsor of terrorism. Members of Congress have not yet received reports regarding negotiations in Moscow, but they state that the return of all children abducted from Ukraine remains a priority. It must be an integral part of the agreements.
There will be a combination of sacrifices from Ukraine, as I understand it. Regarding territory, NATO status, something will have to be given up, something gained. You will have to sacrifice something. But most importantly, you should not be asked to sacrifice your children.
Today we will hear testimonies from Ukrainian figures, organizations and initiatives, thanks to whose support more than 1,000 Ukrainian children who were abducted by the Russian Federation have already been returned. This means that we already have over 1,000 testimonies from those children who have returned since the beginning of the full-scale invasion.
Deferral of conscripts from military service, even those who are wanted. Starting today, violators of military registration can come out of the shadows. Now, critically important enterprises in the defense sector will be able to defer employees whose military registration documents are improperly processed, who do not have such documents at all, or who are wanted. Such Ukrainians are given a legal grace period. A temporary deferral for 45 days is provided to resolve all discrepancies in the paperwork. In this way, the state is trying to solve several problems at once. In particular, more highly qualified workers will remain at enterprises, and men who previously had issues with their documents will come out of the shadows and work legally. This is explained by MP Helena Yanchenko and lawyer Lydia Karplyuk.
Each person can receive such temporary deferment only from a defense enterprise, and only once a year. According to the General Staff, there are about 1.5 million men who have issues with their military registration documents, and accordingly, this is a personnel reserve that has not been utilized.
Perhaps not completely, but partially, the problem of staff shortages can be addressed thanks to this law. For those who have violated military registration rules, this is a great opportunity. They can officially get employed and within these 45 days resolve their issues with the Territorial Recruitment Center.
What do you think? Will this really work? And will those violating military registration really take this opportunity and get jobs at defense factories? We're waiting for all your thoughts in the comments under this broadcast on YouTube. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss our live streams. The next one is already at 2 p.m. See you then.